In South Korea, one of the most famous names in the world at the time was a man known online as the Drunk Driver Hunter. A self-styled vigilante, he patrolled the streets in his car, broadcasting his hunts live to thousands of subscribers. His audience didn't even just watch. They encouraged him by donating money, cheering when he cornered a suspect, and sharing clips of his confrontations to them. He wasn't just a guy at the dashboard camera, he was a hero. But on September 22nd, 2024, the image shattered. It was just before 4 a.m. in Gwangju. The Drunk Driver Hunter was streaming as usual, when he claimed to spot a man in his mid-30s driving erratically. He suspected drunk driver, and instead of simply calling the police and letting them handle it, he hit the accelerator. His chat lit up, messages urging him to catch him, with a mix of laughing emojis and taunts aimed at the driver. But the hunt didn't just stay between two cars for long. Two other vehicles driven by his own subscribers joined in, turning the chase into a convoy. The cameras kept rolling as they closed the distance. It lasted barely 2 minutes. At an intersection near a gas station, the suspect's SUV veered off and slammed into a parked cement trailer. The sound of the impact was followed by a bloom of fire in the dark. When the emergency crews arrived, the car was engulfed. They rushed him to the hospital, but it was too late. He would later die from his injuries. The live stream would end, but the footage had already been clipped, downloaded, and spread across social media. Some call it justice, while others call it manslaughter. In the days that followed, more details emerged. The crash had caused nearly $10,000 worth of property damage. The driver who died wasn't given a sobriety test, so there was no chance to prove the accusation that started it all. And the man responsible for chasing him down wasn't a trained officer, he was a content creator. And by April 2025, prosecutors formally indicted the Drunk Driver Hunter, identified only by his surname, Choi, on charges including joint intimidation under Korea's Punishment of Violence Act. 11 other people, all subscribers who had joined or assisted in the chase, were also charged. To the authorities, this wasn't a community service, it was vigilantism that put innocent bystanders in danger and costed a man his life. For his fans, the case was harder to swallow. Some insisted Choi was just doing what the police wouldn't. Others admitted that he'd gotten carried away, cheering for a pursuit they now realized was deadly. But at the center of it all was a single truth. When the line between justice and content blurs, it's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt. And in this case, it happened live, in front of an audience that tuned in for a thrill, and ended up watching a man die. In South Korea's YouTube scene, drama isn't just online, it's personal, and for two men, both in their 50s, the tension had been building for years. They weren't celebrities in the traditional sense. Their followings were very modest, thousands, not millions, but loyal enough to feel an ongoing rivalry. The feud played out across streams, comments, and courtroom hearings. They accused each other of lies, slander, and worse. And what started as insults became lawsuits, and what began as content turned into something far more dangerous. One of them was Cho, a Busan-based streamer who often spoke about legal disputes, public issues, and the people he said who wronged him. The other, Hong, had once been his associate, but the relationship had soared into pure hostility. Over time, their live streams became battlefields, entire broadcasts dedicated to mocking each other, dissecting their personal lives, and stoking their respective audiences. And by the May of 2024, things have escalated beyond the internet. Cho had accused Hong of assault in a previous confrontation, and the case had gone to trial. And on May 9th, outside the Busan District Court, Cho began a live stream. The camera framed him standing near the entrance, holding a microphone, speaking directly to his viewers about the ongoing case. He told them he was determined to see justice served, that the man who attacked him would face the consequences. But in the background of that broadcast, another figure appeared. It was Hong. He had traveled there armed with a serrated knife, nearly a foot long, purchased just the day before. And police would later reveal that he'd rented a car in advance, planning not just the attack, but his escape route. And on the live stream, there was no warning. Hong closed the distance, pulled the knife, and lunged. Viewers watched in shock as the camera shook, as Cho collapsed mid-broadcast. Some thought it was staged, just another piece of drama for clicks, but it wasn't. Emergency responders rushed Cho to the hospital. Cho didn't survive. Hong fled the scene in his rental car, driving north toward Ganju. He didn't get far. Within 2 hours, police intercepted him, and he was taken into custody without resistance. The attack wasn't random. Investigators called it a retaliatory murder, revenge for the public humiliation, legal pressure, and the years of on-camera insults. It was the violent conclusion to a feud that had outgrown the screen. In court, Hong showed little remorse. He admitted to the killing, he admitted to planning it. In November 2024, when the judge handed down a life sentence, Hong clapped his hands and said, "Thank you." The live stream was quickly taken down, not before thousands had seen it. For Cho's audience, it was a horrifying betrayal of the parasocial bond they had had, watching a man they followed for years be killed in real time. And for the wider public, it was a sobering reminder of what happens when online rivalries cross into the real world. This wasn't just a murder. It was a collision of ego, performance, and rage. And if you spent years feeding an audience with hate, what happens when someone decides to take the ending offline? Analog horror has taken countless shapes over the past decade. Some creators mimic lost public access broadcasts, their tapes warped and eaten by static. Others build entire worlds through fictional news, warning of cosmic events that never happened. You'll find channels that feel like training videos from forgotten corporations or weather alerts that hint at something terrible creeping in. It's a style built on distortion, nostalgia, and unease, turning the familiar into something just a little too strange. But while most of the series leans on fictional warnings or nightmarish lore, there's one I stumbled across that takes a completely different approach. It's a channel called Light of a Dying Star, and instead of old corporate tapes or horror ARGs, it uses the faces of K-pop's icons.
Hello! Do you want to learn how to do the dance?
At first glance, it feels like a fan edit channel, bright colors, pastel filters, and nostalgic flashes of pop culture. The videos start layering visual noise, VHS tracking lines, color bleeding, subtle frame glitches that bend smiles into something uncanny. But by the time they fade, the colors are already breaking apart into static. It's not outright horror, but the implication sits heavy, like there's something just beneath the surface you're not supposed to see. It's a very fascinating twist on the analog horror format, using beauty and nostalgia not to comfort you, but to unsettle you. And it works because these faces and songs are familiar, and safe until they aren't. If you're into these type of experimental edits, analog horror, or you just want to see something that blends pop culture with quiet dread, I recommend checking it out. In Seoul, South Korea, Halloween has always been a night of noise, neon, and celebration. But in 2022, it became something else entirely. October 29th, 2022, Itaewon. The first major Halloween after years of pandemic restrictions. No mask, no distancing, just a promise of a night out. Tens of thousands followed the narrow streets, young people in costumes, tourists, and friends meeting for the first time in months. The crowd grew so dense that moving forward or backwards became nearly impossible. By nightfall, an alley barely 3 meters wide became a funnel for hundreds of people. The slope pulled them downward to a wall of bodies. Somewhere in the press, someone stumbled, and then another, and the weight of the crowd folded in on itself. It wasn't a stampede, it was a crush. The air squeezed from their lungs, chests pinned between strangers, panic rising every second. Calls for help were swallowed by the noise. People tried to climb the walls, to pull others out, but the pressure was relentless. When the density reaches more than 8 people per square meter, experts say you're no longer in control of your movement. A single push becomes a chain reaction. When first responders arrived, the scene was chaos. Paramedics performed CPR on sidewalks. Off-duty soldiers and civilians worked side by side, trying to revive the fallen. But it was already too late for many. By the end of the night, at least 153 people were dead. Most in their teens and 20s. 27 of them were foreign nationals. And over 150 more people were injured. In the days after, South Korea demanded answers. The alley had no crowd control measures. Police presence was minimal. And hours before the crush, warnings had been made, calls to police about overcrowding, but no action was ever taken. Investigators concluded it was system negligence. Senior officers and local officers were indicted. Families of the victims gathered for vigils, holding photos and candles where their children had died. And for many, Itaewon is now a ghost in the middle of Seoul, a place where music and laughter were replaced with silence and grief. It wasn't just a tragedy, it was a reminder of how quickly joy can turn into disaster, and how ignoring danger signs can make the difference between celebration and catastrophe. In South Korea, the subway is lifeblood, a space of quiet, routine, and silent strangers, except on May 31st, 2025. It was 8:42 a.m., right in the middle of a morning rush. A 67-year-old man identified only as Juan stepped into the train fully aware the world would watch. And with speed, he retrieved a plastic bottle filled with gasoline, calmly splashing it across the floor of a moving train. Yellow liquid would shimmer under the flickering lights. There was a still silence before the chaos. Passengers already squeezed shoulder to shoulder didn't notice the danger until the first flicker. Flames erupted, panic ensued. A pregnant woman leapt, slipped, and lost her shoe in an instant panic. In seconds, the subway car filled with fire and smoke. But thanks to previous subway upgrades, panic didn't become disaster. Passengers pried open the doors and used fire extinguishers and evacuated into the tunnels. Incredibly, no one died, an almost miraculous outcome. But yet, 6 people were physically injured. 23 of them suffered smoke inhalation, and at least 123 received on-spot care. The damage to the train was totaled approximately at 330 million won, which is the equivalent of $243,000. Everyone was shaken, traumatized, but alive. And this wasn't random. Prosecutors revealed it was deliberate. An act of arson. The suspect had allegedly purchased gasoline weeks in advance, motivated by the fury over a divorce settlement. And by late June, the Seoul Southern District Prosecutor's Office formally indicted Won. He now faces charges including attempted murder, arson on a moving passenger vehicle, and violating the Railway Safety Act. The event turned a typical morning route into a complete nightmare. For most people, live streaming is a hobby, a way to connect with friends, fans, or strangers online. And for one woman in South Korea, it's something very different. She doesn't stream for entertainment. She streams because she believes her life depends on it. Her name is Chip Chan, and for nearly 2 decades, her camera has barely stopped rolling. The first traces of Chip Chan's live streams dated back to 2006. Video quality hasn't changed much since then. Grainy, low-resolution feeds from a small, cluttered apartment. On camera, she's often silent, sometimes slumped in a chair, sometimes lying on the floor for hours at a time. Behind her, handwritten signs cover the walls, explaining what she says is happening to her. According to Chip Chan, she's the target of a rogue South Korean police officer, a man she only refers to as P. She claims that P broke into her home years ago and implanted a mind control device in her ankle. She says the chip allows him to monitor her thoughts, hear what she hears, and even force her body to collapse on command. Her explanation is elaborate. She says the implant is connected to the right side of her brain, allowing P and multiple intelligence agencies around the world to control her behavior and track her every move. When she suddenly falls unconscious, she claims it's the chip. And during these moments, P can enter her home, steal from her, or even harm her. To catch him in the act, she begins broadcasting her life 24/7. The idea was simple. If she's taken, if someone breaks in, there will be witnesses. But what's strange is how long this has gone on for. Not weeks, and not months, and not even years. It's been almost 2 decades. Day after day, the camera stays on. Sometimes she streams for 12 hours straight, sometimes for 20. Some days she uploads multiple videos in a row, each one just another stretch of her sitting, sleeping, or pacing in a small room. Online, a small community formed around her, a subreddit called Chip Chan, spent years documenting her activity, noting when she leaves the apartment, when she changes signs, or when something unusual happens. Some follow out of genuine concern, and others out of morbid curiosity. Her signs are written in Korean and English, but often describe new incidents. Power outages, she says, was caused remotely. Broken computers and phones she claimed were sabotaged to stop her from streaming. And always warnings about P. On her blog, she goes into more detail. She writes about losing consciousness on the street for 5 to 10 minutes at a time, only to wake up in the same spot with no memory of what just happened. She writes about thefts, stalking, and harassment. She warns that the mind control weapon is not just used on her, but on political enemies, activists, and even spies. Viewers sometimes try to interact with her in chat. If you ask her if she's okay, others would mock her or pretend to be P threatening her in real time. It's disturbing because whether or not you believe her story, it's clear she believes it completely. She's been seen suddenly waking up, looking disoriented, or rushing to write something down. And at other times, she simply stares at the floor for hours, motionless. There's never been a definitive answer about who she really is, or if P even exists. Some think it's a genuine victim of long-term stalking. Others suspect a severe, untreated mental illness, possibly schizophrenia, that's gone unaddressed for decades. And then there's a darker possibility that she's both. That someone may have taken advantage of her mental state, and that the fear we're seeing is real, even if the details aren't. And the truth is, Chip Chan has been living like this for most of her adult life, streaming to strangers, sleeping in the view of the world, surrounded by signs warning of a man named P. Chip Chan's streams still appear from time to time, and if you search carefully, you might find her.